The Atlanta Braves swept the Pittsburgh Pirates to wrap their homestand. What did we learn about this team this weekend? I think maybe more than the win-loss record will tell you. Yes, welcome on into Braves Today, a production of the Belief Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. I'm your host, Lindsey Crosby, author of the Braves Today newsletter over at bravestoday.com. Braves take down the Pittsburgh Pirates all three games of the series, 6-3 on Friday, 6-3 on Saturday, 3-2 on Sunday. And we're not here to break down every single moment of all three games, right? I'm not going to say, hey, in the sixth inning, you saw this pitch sequence and all of that. We do have a postcast on both Friday and Sunday over on Locked On Sports Atlanta, and I've got the Today's Three Things game articles from all three games over at bravestoday.com if you want a blow-by-blow picture of each individual game. What I instead want to talk about was the good and the bad overall and what we can learn from the series moving forward. Because I think that's the important way to look at a three-game series in a 162-game season. It's an opportunity to gather more information about who this team is now, but also what we need to do, what needs to change, what we need to add, whatever, as we get closer and closer to the postseason. Because it's time to admit, and I'm sure most people already have, but the Atlanta Braves are, depending on how you evaluate it, the best or the second best team in baseball. If you look at World Series odds, Dodgers are still number one. They're going to be number one until somebody knocks them off. The Braves have the second best odds in the National League. If you look at win-loss record, Atlanta's number one. They're 45-21. The next closest team is LA at 42. Fun fact, the next closest American League team is Tampa Bay at 37-25. The American League is awful this year, which is going to impact a lot of stuff. We'll have more on that a little bit later. If you look at run differential, Atlanta is the second best team. There are only three teams in baseball with a run differential over 100. Dodgers are at plus 133. Braves are at plus 116. Brewers are at plus 105. Offensively, they've started to catch up to Atlanta. And from a runs allowed perspective, they're pretty close to where the Braves are, albeit they have played less games than the Braves have. They have played 63 games to Atlanta's 66. So you could argue they're probably a better offense as far as runs per game. They're not where the Braves are yet as far as run prevention. But not here nor there. So let's highlight the good and the bad from the weekend. And something that I think we can highlight is that while clutch isn't really a thing that we can accurately measure, it does feel like this iteration of the Braves has produced better in those clutch situations. Thing number one I want to take out of the weekend. And I guess the best way to look at this is Fangraphs has splits for leverage. High leverage, medium leverage, and low leverage. And the very simplified version of that, I think I've done this before, is the leverage index by them measures every single plate appearance according to how much it can change the game's win expectancy, right? You may hit a home run in the second inning, which ends up being the winning run. But in the moment, there wasn't a lot of win expectancy change because there was so much game left. That's probably classified as a low leverage moment. It just ended up being the winning run. Or You can have, here's a better example. A lot of people use runners in scoring position stats as a proxy for leverage. But if you have a runner on second in a 9-run game and you're winning, is that really a high leverage moment, a clutch moment, or is that just an empty runners in scoring position moment? Something I have plans to do this week, maybe the off day today, is to look at the difference in the team's runners in scoring position stats and their leverage stats to figure out who do we believe is clutch and who actually is clutch. But I think after this weekend, you can very easily say that we have yet another data point that several Braves hitters, pitchers are successful more often than not in these clutch situations. And again, using leverage as a proxy for clutch. If you think about Sunday's game, the hero of Sunday's game was Michael Harris. And the way that this happened, if you missed a lot of this weekend, he left Friday night's game at the start of the 9th inning with tightness in his back. Precautionary. Walt Weiss said at the time, Friday night, right after the game, they thought he would be able to be in the lineup on Saturday. He wasn't in the lineup Saturday or Sunday, but Walt Weiss said he was available off the bench. He gets in the game on Sunday. He goes in to pinch hit in the 7th inning, and Atlanta trailing 2-0 with the bases loaded. And Michael Harris hits a 3-run double to right. Second pitch he saw, I think it was like a sinker on the outer third and middle of the zone, and rips it into the corner. Jorge Mateo, luckily, is the guy that's on first. He drew a walk right before that. Dom Smith got on because of a throwing error, and then Yastrzemski and Jorge Mateo both walk. So Mateo just flying around the bases, scores ahead of the throw, and Atlanta goes from trailing 2-0 to a 3-0 lead. That was their third hit of the game in the 7th inning. But that's the kind of thing that it's a runner in scoring position at bat, but it also shows up in leverage situations because of, it classifies as a high leverage situation because of the game condition. Right? Losing in the 7th inning with 3 runners on. The winning run is on first base. That's the kind of thing that flips win expectancy. And I think the process of this is worth pointing out. Because in his career, leading up to this season, Michael Harris hasn't ever been bad against lefties. It's a career 95 WRC plus. Remember, 100 is average, so he's slightly below average against lefties, but he wasn't terrible. But I specifically remember when Mike Yastrzemski was signed, some of the conversation they discussed they were like, yeah, Mike Yastrzemski can cover center field if you need to. And then when they acquired Mauricio Dubón, they talked about, because Dubón historically has been better against lefties than righties, you could take Michael Harris out against a tough lefty and let Dubón cover center field. So he's never been terrible against lefties, but there was conversation about protecting him in those situations. The way that this went yesterday, Bubba Chandler's the pitcher. Evan Sisk, a lefty reliever, was throwing for the Pirates. And Atlanta knew it was going to be a lefty coming into the game. They went with Michael Harris anyway. To Walt Weiss, the fact that Michael Harris was available off the bench meant that no matter if it was a righty or a lefty, they thought it was a favorable matchup. And again, career 95 WRC plus entering this year against lefties. It's a small sample size. It's 86 plate appearances. But right now against lefties, Michael has a 128 WRC plus. He's at 2.1 FWAR at the moment. And when you look at his WRC plus in those Fangraphs high leverage situations, he has a 149. He's tied with Drake Baldwin at 149 for high leverage situations and being able to produce offensively. That's not the only example from the weekend, but I think that's a really useful one to illustrate a takeaway that you can have about the team from a sweep where maybe some of the underlying stuff wasn't necessarily great. And believe it or not, that's not the best WRC plus on the team in those situations. Mauricio Dubón has a 240. He has been legitimately one of the clutchest hitters in baseball in those situations. The other part that makes it tough, talking about clutch hitting, is the sample sizes involved always make you question how much of this is random variance, how much of this is legitimate and something inherent to the player. We had this conversation in the Braves Today Discord maybe last week, I think. And something that I think helps the case for maybe a little bit for Harris, but really makes the case for Dubón, and I'm getting a little off topic here, but is the fact that you can see mechanical changes in his approach in those situations. You can see how he shortens the swing. His goal is to shoot a ball the other way. He's not trying to do too much. He hit a bunch of home runs last week, and that was after Chipper Jones gave him a little bit of, had a conversation, a little bit of advice and things like that about his approach and what to do with it. But I feel better about thinking those smaller samples are somewhat legitimate when you can point to a concrete thing that is different than normal. So with Dubón, I feel it. With Michael Harris, I feel it. They are doing things differently and getting the results in leverage moments. And again, I'm going to find some time, maybe this afternoon, I think I already mentioned this, to try and cross-reference runners and scoring position stats with leverage stats to see who actually is clutch and who has produced in runners in scoring position but not clutch situations, right? You're up by 9 and you got a guy on second. If you get a hit there, sure, that's great. Runner in scoring position hit. It didn't change the win expectancy, right? It wasn't actually a leverage moment. It wasn't a high-stakes moment. It was just a runner in scoring position. So I'm going to go look into that hopefully this afternoon and have that for you sometime soon. In just a minute, let's talk about, I'm going to call it a disappointing takeaway from the weekend, and it refers back to some concerns about the starting rotation. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, this episode's brought to you by our friends at IQ Bar, our exclusive snack, hydration, and coffee sponsor. IQ Bar protein bars, IQ Mix hydration mixes, and IQ Joe mushroom-infused coffees are the tasty, low-sugar brain and body fuel that you need to win your day. The Ultimate Sampler Pack's a great way to try all of the IQ Bar products and flavors. You get 9 IQ bars, 8 IQ Mix sticks, and 4 IQ Joe sticks. And all IQ Bar products are clean label certified and entirely free from gluten, dairy, soy, GMOs, and artificial ingredients. With over 20,000 5-star reviews and counting, more people than ever are fueling their busy lifestyles with IQ Bar's brain and body boosting bars, hydration mixes, and mushroom-infused coffees. And the Ultimate Sampler Pack includes all 3. Right now, IQ Bar is offering Braves Today listeners 20% off of all IQ Bar products, including the Ultimate Sampler Pack, plus free shipping. To get your 20% off, text MLB to 64,000. That's MLB to 64000. That's MLB to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. I feel better about the results that we got from the rotation this weekend than I do the process and the way you got to them. So Martín Pérez Friday night, 3 earned runs across 5 innings. He yields to the bullpen, right? Spencer Strider, 3 runs, 5 hits in 5 innings, yields to the bullpen. Bryce Elder, outperforms them both. Two earned runs on 2 hits in 6 innings. Yields to the bullpen. And I have to be careful about how I do this. That matters. That process matters. I'm sorry. Those results matter. I am concerned that the process to get to those results isn't that sustainable. What I mean by that, there were things to like from all of those outings. Martín Pérez, average exit velocity allowed of only 81.2 miles an hour. Their dudes were just not squaring him up. They really were not. 13 balls in play. The only 2 hard hit balls were in the only inning that he had trouble, the first 2 hits of the 3rd inning. He averaged 88.8 on the fastball. He maxed out. His hardest pitch was 90 miles an hour. It feels very reliable for a 5-and-dive start. 5 innings, he keeps you in the game. He'll give up a couple runs, but he'll keep you in the game. You can hand it over to the bullpen, and you have a chance to win. I don't know how sustainable that is in the playoffs. His ability to minimize hard contact is legitimately good, right? That is valuable. I don't know how replicable it is when you face really good offenses in the postseason, where teams are usually a little more prepared, stakes are higher, and approaches are a little bit different. Game plans are a little more robust. I don't know. And Bryce Elder got a little shaky there in the 9th, but he sealed that win. When you go to Saturday, Spencer Strider's outing was, I think, the only way to call this or to describe this was concerning. 43 swings off of Spencer Strider, 6 whiffs. Which is very un-Strider-like. 20 swings against the fastball, 0 whiffs. He averaged under 95 with the 4-seam fastball on Saturday. He maxed out at 96.7. I wrote a week ago after his last start that I thought Strider was turning a corner and becoming a better pitcher because of how much more he was using the curveball and mixing the changeup in, which was better, doing a lot of those things. I don't know what to think about Spencer Strider at this point. Because again, the results were fine. He made it through 5, 3 runs. You were in the game. But that also doesn't feel like sustainable process. One of the one of the criticisms, polite critiques I had of J.R. Ritchie was he wasn't missing enough bats. 6 whiffs on 43 swings for Strider is not missing enough bats. And I know that the Pirates are a good offense. We talked about this last week. But you're going to face good offenses in the postseason. You're going to face offenses just as good as them or better. I am at the point with Strider where I still am holding out faith, belief, whatever, that he can get to where we need him to be as far as a number 2 or a number 3 starter at some point in time. But I've also gotten to the point where I don't want to count on that. Treating it like I'm treating the Spencer Schwellenbach thing or getting Joe Jimenez back this year, maybe. I don't want to count on it. It'll be nice if it happens. It'll be a great addition. I don't want to assume it's just automatically going to happen. And I think we're at the point in Strider's season where we can acknowledge that's a step back. It's not the end of the world, but also the concerns are legitimate. We're not closing the door on him. We're not writing him off. But I think it's fair to say there's just no way to know. what the final form of Spencer Strider is going to be. This is a guy that is a major league starter, but you can't count on this version of Strider in the postseason. Maybe you get a Hurston Waldrop back. Maybe, and he can take that form. I wrote late last season that I thought you could pencil him in as a postseason starter based on what he did in that limited sample last year. Maybe he is that guy. Maybe A.J. Smith-Shawver coming back from Tommy John. A lot of guys don't do it right away. Maybe he will be able to show that form again. I don't know. But I do think that right now you're looking at one no doubt postseason impact starter. And then you've got some questions. Bryce Elder on Sunday. Bryce Elder was the most consistent of all three guys that you threw. 2 hits, 2 earned runs. One of the hits was a home run. The other one was a swinging bunt at 40 miles an hour. And Bryce Elder did not have his best stuff yesterday. The four-seam fastball really abandoned him. And that's been his primary pitch against left-handers. Going into yesterday's game, he was 34% four-seamer to lefties, 28% slider, 17% cutter, 12% changeup, 9% sinker. Against Pittsburgh, the cutter was his number 1 pitch to lefties. Number 2 was the sinker, then the four-seamer, then the slider, then the changeup. He didn't have the four-seamer yesterday. He got 5 swings on it in 13 thrown. He got 1 whiff, and he really he stayed away from it all game. He must have known going in he didn't really have it. He was heavy sinker the first time through the order, and he just never really ramped up the four-seamer usage. It was like 12% first time through, 15% the second time through. He got in he got in multiple 3-0 counts. He was 3 different 3-0 counts, which ties for the season high for him. But he worked it out. He got through it. Older versions of Bryce Elder, the versions that were just almost entirely sinker slider with a little bit of a changeup and a little bit of a four-seamer, that guy would have been blown out for 6 runs in 4 1/3 innings, and you'd have had to ask the pen to cover more than half the game. Not this version of Bryce Elder. He made it through. 2 hits, 2 runs. He is the second most reliable starter for the Braves. I still don't know how this is going to translate to the postseason. We've seen him in the past struggle in the postseason. That's also a different version of Strider. At this point, I don't necessarily know. I feel like you're gonna throw him in the postseason. But game 3? Game 4? Will you have Sale and then 2 other guys in front of him? Will you have Sale and 1 other guy in front of him? I don't really know. But I feel like I'm just more convinced after this weekend. Atlanta's the number 1 need for this team is probably still a big bat if they can find one. But right behind that has got to be a frontline starter. Which, speaking of, I wrote on the newsletter today about Jacob deGrom should be the guy. Go check it out. A lot of reasons why it makes sense from a contract perspective, from an availability or ability to actually get him perspective, right? It's easy to just say, oh, you should add this guy or that guy. But, like, why would you get the guy over somebody else? I think that's worth I think we need to remember that. Why would you get that guy versus somebody else getting that guy? Or why would he be available, period? And I think the obstacle to deGrom being available is how mediocre the American League is and how many teams are still in it. They have a losing record and they're in the final wildcard spot. But if they fall out of it, I think if they make deGrom available, there's a bunch of reasons why he would likely either leverage his no-trade clause to get to Atlanta or be willing to waive his no-trade clause to come to Atlanta. So go check that out at bravestoday.com. In just a minute, let's go back to some more positivity from the weekend. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today. Let's talk about the bullpen, because I mentioned Martín Pérez, 5 innings, 5 and dive. Spencer Strider, 5 and dive. You got 6 out of Elder. The bullpen covered 11 innings this weekend. And this is after you had to use them a little bit during the week as well against the Blue Jays. And so I am sure glad today's an off day. Give all of those guys a break. But the way Atlanta was able to close out the game on Sunday is worth discussion, okay? Both the good and bad. So setting the scenario entering Sunday, and reminder, every single time we do the scouting report, either the live stream, which there wasn't one on Sunday, or the written article, one of the things that I'm talking about is the bullpen usage, right? Who should be up and who should be down based on pitch counts, things that we actually know, right? We don't know if somebody woke up with a sore neck or tightness in their hamstring or whatever, but based off pitch counts and usage, what we should know. So setting the scene going into Sunday's game, Raisel Iglesias had pitched both Friday and Saturday. He was at 39 combined pitches for the 2 days. So odds are he was going to be down on Sunday. They've used him 3 consecutive days before. Walt Weiss hasn't been as willing to do it as Brian Snitker was. And typically when they did that, it's when Iglesias, one of the first 2 appearances was an Iggy. He got the save in 10 pitches or less. Not the scenario here. Dylan Lee had pitched 3 of the previous 4 games. So he was at like 43 pitches over the previous 4 days, which is typically a situation where a guy's going to be down, right? Robert Suarez was at 41 over the previous 4 days. He had pitched 3 of the previous 4 days, and he had gotten Saturday off. We found out after the game that Walt Weiss had decided to also give Suarez Sunday off so that he had a chance 4 consecutive days off, and then you have the off day on Monday. So your bullpen's a little short going into Sunday. And even some of the guys who you want to go to, like Tyler Kinley, pitched on Sunday. He bailed Ronaldo Lopez out in the 8th. He had thrown 25 pitches on Saturday. So he wasn't as fresh as possible, right? Didier Fuentes had a back-to-back on Thursday and Friday. He got Saturday off. Ronaldo Lopez threw 36 on Thursday. Dylan Dodd had thrown Thursday and Saturday. Just about everybody other than Carlos Carrasco, who is the long man and just eat innings guy in the back, had everybody else had been used pretty heavily. So Atlanta goes to Raylo for the 7th inning after Elder leaves. And he gets through the 7th pretty easily, actually. It's not actually that close or dramatic of an inning or whatever. In the 8th, he runs into a little bit of trouble. There's a bunt ground out by Jared Triolo. Shout out to Austin Wins, who just entered the game after Michael Harris had hit for Sandy Leone. Makes a great play, right? But then Raylo gives up just a ripped line drive to left. 105 off the bat of backup catcher Andy Rodriguez. And then Spencer Horwitz draws a walk. And Horwitz had already homered in that game. And so they go to Tyler Kinley. Runners on first and second, 1 out. He gets a line out. He issues a walk to load the bases and then gets a ground out to end it. But for the 9th, Iggy's presumably down. Lee's down. Suarez is down. Who do you go to? Didier Fuentes gets the call for the 9th. It's his first career save situation. He's been in leverage moments before. Remember, we had a game, and I can't think of who this was, But we had a game where you went Lee, Suarez, Iglesias, 7th, 8th, and 9th in a tie game, and it stayed tied, and you went to extras, and Fuentes was the pitcher in the 10th. So he's been in leverage moments before, but he's never had a save situation. And so, save situation, it's not the top of the order. It's 5, 6, and 7, right? So Marcell Ozuna is the first scheduled hitter in the top of the 9th. Brandon Lau comes in to pinch hit for him, and he hits a double to Ronald Acuna Jr. First pitch slider, bottom of the zone, turns on it 106 down the line, double. They put in O'Neal Cruz, probably the fastest player on that roster, to run for Brandon Lau. Diddy gets a strikeout, swinging of Tyler Callahan, 3 straight pitches. Fastball, slider, fastball. And the locations are perfect. Fastball just off the plate away. Can barely get a bat on it, fouls it off. Drops a slider down and in on Callahan's feet, and he just barely gets a... He swings over it, and it just nicks off the bat. And then Diddy goes right back to that original fastball location, right? Got him to swing up, got him to swing down, changes eye level down, goes back to that same fastball location, gets the whiff. Strikeout. He then gives up a ground ball single to Ozzy. Not Ozzy's fault. It was like under 70 miles an hour. Just wet grass, slow roller, perfectly placed. Ozzy has to eat it. Nothing he can do but just eat it, right? Triolo gets down the line well. Runners on first and third, 1 out. Diddy gets Jerry Triolo to pop out to Ozzy, 80 miles an hour. Just a little pop-up on a slider that he's looking fastball. And so it was fastball away, slider down. He goes back to the fastball location, but instead of a fastball, it's a slider. And so I guess, I don't know if Triolo was looking for, because if he's looking for a fastball there, he's going to be on top of the slider. Maybe he was looking for the breaking ball down, and so he was underneath the elevated slider. I don't know, but he pops it up, and then he gets a strikeout of Indy Rodriguez on just a gorgeous slider. And the thing here with Didier Fuentes, he threw more sliders than fastballs in this one. And one of the criticisms we had of him as a starter, and he's going to be back to a starter next year, but one of the criticisms we had of him as a starter, and when he first got in the bullpen, was he was too fastball heavy. He was sitting 70% fastballs. And you have to be more well-rounded than just super fastball heavy in MLB in 2026. More sliders and fastballs. He still didn't use the splitter. It's not he's at his final form, but he threw more sliders than fastballs and just was able to keep Pittsburgh hitters off balance, gets his first career save. Kid's not even old enough to buy a beer yet. It's actually, fun fact on that note, I had it here. He is the youngest MLB pitcher to record a save since 2019, and the youngest Braves pitcher to record a save since 1971. And so when you look at the leverage situations for this team, when it comes to the bullpen, I've been talking for a while on the postcast about the tree of trust, right? The bullpen tree of trust. Lee, Suarez, Iglesias, absolutely, they're all amazing this year. Didier Fuentes is right behind them for how much they trust him. They needed a save. They didn't have Suarez available. They didn't have Iglesias available. They went with Didier Fuentes. And they could have thrown Tyler Kinley in for the save. They decided to give the save opportunity to Fuentes over Kinley. So you've got the big three. You've got Fuentes. They still have faith in Tyler Kinley. to pitch in leverage situations. Dylan Dodd is a guy that they've been more willing to use in leverage situations. While I still think you're going to see them add a reliever at the deadline, because just about every contending team acquires a reliever at the deadline. Just why not? I do feel like this is one of the deeper bullpens Atlanta's had in a long time. And I think you saw an example of that on Sunday, how all of their top guys were down. Very close game. Your offense didn't do much of anything. Atlanta had 3 hits all game. They only had 1 hit after the first inning when they got the bases loaded and couldn't bring a run in. Until that Michael Harris, They had 2 hits. They had 1 in the second inning, and then they didn't have another one till the Michael Harris double. But it's not as urgent to add a super high leverage arm, because I think they trust Didier Fuentes to be a 4th leverage arm for them. Now, if you want to go get a guy, I'm not opposed to that, obviously. And I do think whoever they get, whether it is I'm not going to call him front line, but an impact reliever who has closing experience and amazing stuff, or they just get whoever, it needs to be somebody who can get lefties out. I don't care about handedness. We keep saying you need a lefty reliever. You don't really need a lefty reliever. You just need a guy who can get lefties out. Typically, those are lefty relievers. They don't have to be. Dylan Dodd's a lefty who is better against righties than lefties. Reverse splits. You can get a reverse splits right-handed reliever, for all I care. You can just get a dude with filthy stuff who gets everybody out, and it doesn't matter. But the point is, I feel a lot better about the bullpen. And I already felt really good about the bullpen. But seeing Fuentes succeed in the situations he's been put in recently, he's able to handle a back-to-back now. He's adjusting the pitch mix to throw more sliders. He still has the splitter he can theoretically break out if he needs to. You have to feel really good about the depth of this bullpen and what they're able to do when it comes down to it. They are right now in Chicago. They flew yesterday to Chicago. They'll take on the White Sox starting tomorrow. Grant Holmes versus Eric Fedde on Tuesday. The original rotation was fully announced with Fedde on Wednesday. It was a battle of Braves legends in Chris Sale and Eric Fedde. And then Chicago changed the rotation, and they put Fedde on Tuesday, followed by 2 TBDs. So we don't actually know who's going to pitch for the White Sox this week as of yet. Hopefully we know by tomorrow, so I can bring you a preview of the series, not only where they are offensively. You need to know about how good Colson Montgomery is, but also we can talk about the pitching matchups and not just, here's who may possibly go, but we have Grant Holmes, Chris Sale, and Martín Pérez lined up for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And which means we won't have Sale available for the weekend in New York against the Mets. But that means we'll have Strider, we'll have Elder, and I presume based off of this lineup, we would have Grant Holmes as well, unless they decide to go with a 6th starter for that series. But that'll do it for Braves Today for Monday, June 8th. Please like the video, please subscribe, both here and at bravestoday.com. Subscriptions over there help us out a ton. Lots of content coming out. Taylor's about to ramp up a lot of the draft stuff now that Super Regionals are finishing today and the field in Omaha is set. So be ready for that. Probably going to have weekly draft features leading up to next month's draft. But until then, this has been Braves Today.